So anyway, with that, I thank you so much again for coming, and I introduce my lovely Alex Grey, who's going to introduce our wonderful speaker.
Let's see, this one's working too. Thanks, Ed, right? All right. Well, Jason Louv and his crew from Generation Hex did a tremendous presentation last year, I believe it was. 2 years ago. My, how time flies. Hey, Daniel. Hey. Good to see you. And I've always enjoyed Jason's writing, which is both contemporary, mystically rooted in, I think, the absolute truth, and he's been down a very circuitous route in his magical self-training, and made a lot of friends in the process, and found that many contemporaries have been down similar paths. So this new journal that he's come up with, the Ultraculture journal, I've enjoyed reading, and we're going to find out more about it from Jason, who is here with us tonight. Thank you, Jason.
Thank you very much, Alex. Thank you for having me back. It is once again an honor to be here in this space, as it was before. It's always amazing. So, and thank you to everyone who came out tonight. It shows a lot of commitment to understanding what's going on and what the possibilities are for us as a group and as individuals. And especially thank you to the people who came from Canada, because I can't go back to Canada. I got thrown out of the country. So this is probably the only way we can meet.
Why don't you tell us a bit about this new journal? Or do you want to get into your history a little bit first?
I'll talk about the journal. I'm not very interesting. For those who didn't see it, the previous book I did is called Generation Hex. It's an anthology of writing about magic from young writers, and that was 2 years ago. It was published by Disinformation, and it was the beginning of the Ultraculture project, which is just kind of a word and a brand I came up with to designate kind of an umbrella to put radical ideas and magical ideas and evolutionary ideas under, to assemble them into, or reassemble them into a science and a map that we can use to take us forward into the next century. It's working quicker than I thought it was going to, actually. So the new project is one of 6 journals. It's a bit in the style of Crowley's Equinox, although it has nothing to do with Crowley. It's a journal about, well, it's about magic, but it focuses more on Tantra, and it's the beginning of a cultural project. It focuses less on specifically magic and more on ultraculture, bringing culture forward. And it's available to download on the internet. I brought cards to give out for the website. It's a 400-page book. It's on print on demand. You can buy copies off the website. You can also download the whole thing. I asked $10 for it, or 10 random acts of charity. Either one, I don't really care. There's been a lot of charity out there because it's done about 13,000 copies so far, which is amazing, and a testament to the internet. It's so important to me that these ideas get out, and I wanted to use the internet to its full potential. So that'll be available for you. I'm not really sure where to start other than that.
Well, I found it interesting, your definition of magic in one of your written pieces there, the central piece.
Mm-hmm.
Do you want to repeat what that was?
Sure. That's a tricky one, because in the book, okay, well, we'll just get this out of the way now, right? Okay, you are God, you know that, right? Every single one of us is the absolute God, and we are living in a free will universe, and we have access to absolute divinity, whether we choose to remember it or not. The trick is usually it's often more fun to maintain narrative tension and forget. But all of us are God, and all of us are equal, and we are equally co-creating the universe and building this thing piece by piece. So that's the truth. Magic is a hobby. Magic, as we understand it, as passed down from people like Crowley, the Golden Dawn, chaos magic, is, I don't really, well, my definition of magic is, other than, you know, a way to be really goth and collect a lot of deleted coil singles, and collect comic books and do rituals, which can often lead to unexpected consequences. Okay, small magic, magic with a K, small magic, is a system, it's a science, and a set of techniques for causing changes in perceivable reality. And the definition that I always give is, I start with the common public definition of magic, the one that you were raised with, the voodoo doll idea. The idea that if you take a voodoo doll, and you make a voodoo doll of somebody, and you include their hair and their nails, and then you make a model of somebody, and then you make changes to the model that will affect the person. That's the showbiz standard idea of what magic is. Well, real magic, quote unquote, works in the same way. So you take a model of something, and you make changes in the model to affect the actual thing. So a real magician would make a voodoo doll of the universe, and the best way to do that is to use yourself. Because like I just said, you are God, and you live in a self-created universe. So if you make change, and your nervous system makes a complete map and absolute model of the universe that you live in, which is the universe that we all co-create together. So if you make changes in yourself, you are the voodoo doll of your reality, you make changes in yourself that will affect reality, and that can be done through more techniques than are possible to learn in a lifetime. Handed down to us through cultures, every culture, some of which work with fewer side effects than others. But everything from doing a full magical ritual, to creating art, to doing more arcane techniques like sigils, or even things as simple as yoga and meditation, and at the end of the day, most effective technique of all, which is actively choosing with your free will the universe that you live in. And of course you have to choose of your own free will to live in a free will universe. That's how a free will universe works. Will get you where you need to go, and where you need to go is up to every single one of us individually. But I would suggest that as a collaborative project, or as an ultraculture, we create a world worth living in, and one in which everybody can discover their true selves in the best and most supportive environment possible. We have a lot of work to get there, and that's one thing that I'm chipping away at slowly as I go on.
I was reassured to find your underlying premises were completely in line with the whole mystical tradition, that there wasn't a kind of deviance for love being the central focus. And because that's always been the truth I've found too, and the truth that we built this place with. And so that's why we're really glad you could come and share this. So what do you mean by Tantra?
At first I wanted to say I agree. I think that love is the law, as Crowley said. That was one of the things he got right. But that includes absolute respect for other people's choices, which is hard. Love can mean a lot of different things, and it doesn't necessarily mean, a lot of times people use love as a a way to make people's choices for them, and it's much deeper than that. And I agree. I'm more of a mystic than a magician, anyways. But I've mostly given up ceremonial magic because it's just stuff at the end of the day. You know, it's dwelling in truth. The best you can get to it will get you where you need to go much quicker. As far as my definition of Tantra, that's a tough one. It means surrounding myself with lots of aging New Age skanks. No. Yes. No.
Yes.
I'm sorry. My definition of Tantra is freeing yourself by any means necessary and possible. And the Tantra that's normally taught in the New Age skank community is legit and real, but it's only a small piece of the puzzle, and the whole piece of the entire puzzle is being free. And so that's a difficult one. I think it's confronting the self. It's breaking down taboos. It's going against the grain. And in India, the traditional Indian definition of Tantra, in the Indian caste system, there are right-handed Vedic Indian religion breaks down into a 5-caste system, and the Tantrics did everything they could to break out of the rigidity of that system, not necessarily because that system was flawed, but because they were the ones who chose not to participate. And at the end of the day, in our society, that's a little trickier because there's really no taboos left to break in our society. There's nothing left to rebel against. So, in my case, Tantra encompasses such unwholesome and loathsome practices as drinking coffee at Starbucks, working in advertising, and being really into my iPod. As things that were completely anathema to my magical countercultural self. It encompasses a set of techniques for becoming a wholer being by absorbing the taboo and the renegade, whatever that means. And it means waking up. Really, at the end of the day, if you want to take a one-line definition, it means waking up out of our consensus trance and remembering at the end of the day, after you've woken up, that everybody is in a trance because they choose to be, not because they're held down by corporate archons or whatever. It means waking up and then being polite to the people who choose to stay asleep, more or less.
I think that goes very nicely with the kind of Eastern interpretation of Tantra, which I remember talking to Namkai Norbu, who was more of a Dzogchen teacher, but a lot of his practices were also Tantras. And there's many classes of teachings in the Buddhist teachings that are called the Tantras and things. And he was saying the word itself in Tibetan had to do with continuity, and that was the continuity of one's primordial awareness, of one's being this God throughout the day, and that the practices are really just about harnessing whatever passions or emotions or various things that might be considered antithetical to the path, to integrate them into the path, to not try and push them away or deny them, but to integrate them. It sounds very similar.
Yeah, the definition of Tantra that most people know is that it's using the world of illusion or Maya to attain spiritual states and attain enlightenment. It's using what most spiritual traditions reject as unwholesome and unclean, which is just the world we live in. That we're here because presumably we want it to be. But Yeah, Tantra, I think in Sanskrit, Tantra just means it's like a written instruction. Like what we have in the West, grimoires, the same thing. But the Tibetan Tantra and Hindu Tantra are fundamentally very different, and it's Hindu Tantra that is my area of interest. Tibetan Tantra, I think what you're speaking about is the practices for uncovering the state that lies, there's a fourth state that lies underneath the waking, sleeping, and dreaming states. That's covered in their dream yogas, and understanding the continuity that runs underneath all those states, which is your true self, instead of being distracted by the wheel of those changing states throughout the day, and also remembering continuity between lives, which is the primary technology for reincarnation. And whether you believe that everybody reincarnates or not, I think it's pretty indisputable that certainly lamas and high adepts of Tibetan Tantra and of Hindu Tantra and of the Vedic religions and the mainstream religions as well reincarnate. But Hindu Tantra and Tibetan Tantra are completely different things, and without getting into a point-by-point critique of Tibetan Buddhism, I'll just leave it at they're very different.
Do you want to say something about that? I mean, I'm interested in. It's been a very meaningful area of study for me, and I've also really gotten tremendous value out of the Vedic tradition and mostly the Advaita Vedanta kind of tradition. But the non-dual stuff is always very interesting to me. But do you have a bone to pick with Tibetan Buddhists?
What I was going to say is I think that there's the most similarity there is between Advaita Vedanta and Dzogchen and the non-dual states. I think that Buddhism and Tibetan Buddhism, Vajrayana, are, I've also gotten quite a bit of meaning out of them. I think that there's a lot of things that we don't look at in the West about the reality of how Tibet was as a country, and there's a lot of things that are glossed over by Hollywood, who is, a lot of people are very invested in the Free Tibet Project and the Dalai Lama, and what I worry about is there was a tremendous awakening in the 50s and especially the 60s when people realized in this country that that we were absolutely and completely fucked, and finally came around to the realization that white Europeans are actually the least advanced people on the planet. We're very good at making things, but we drank ourselves into stupor for so long that we absolutely cut ourselves off from the world of spirit. And when we reopened those doors that had been shut off by the Enlightenment, I worry that we're often very uncritical of the people that we deify as parents and parental figures in the spiritual community, and the hope that at least somebody has it figured out. And I think some people do have it fully figured out. With Tibet, I worry about there's a tremendous history of medieval brutality and extreme sexism, especially in Vajrayana. A lot of the Vajrayana practices revolve around the use of women as power batteries and the use of women as sex slaves, traditionally. And that's tricky. So I would just hope that people are more critical about the realities of Tibet instead of the image created by Hollywood, which is kind of a fantasy.
I think that's a well-pointed criticism that could go to a lot of the guru sort of relationship situations. It's very tricky. It's one of the most rapid ways for people to advance in their spiritual practice is to have a profound guru yoga with a authentic master and have some sense of transmission and then a relationship that can be cultivated and ongoing. All that's a very ideal kind of situation. Milarepa, you know, I mean, that's a pretty harsh story, but nevertheless it worked. And so there are a lot of excuses that get made as well with the, you know, I mean, Trungpa was one of the most amazing teachers, and could be argued that he brought Tibetan Buddhism to the West. And at the same time, he was a drunk that abused people, and yet has founded a great publishing company, and all the Shambhala trainings and things like that have done, you know, tremendous good. So it's a funny thing, you know. It's the same thing, not so different really, with the Western traditions. We could look at Adi Da, who's a New Yorker, but got you know, the transmission from the Hindu tradition, and then went on to found his own kind of order, which is eccentric, and some worry about its cultish aspects and things. And nevertheless, he's and some people claim that he's abused them and things like that. But also, I find his writings some of the greatest spiritual literature that's come out. So the guru-disciple relationship is very thorny. And as you were saying, in the 60s, when people's eyes were wide open and hopeful, and that all these altruistic, wise people were going to come and enlighten them instead of rob them of their money and rape their daughters. It's tricky.
Right, it's tremendously tricky, and certainly Trump was an interesting case. Amazing work, but the crazy wisdom banner allowed him to get away with a lot of stuff, and not only it's more than, you know, not only him but also his appointed Vajra regent, his successor, who gave quite a few people AIDS.
But then you get Pema Chodron, who is the epitome of a master, and always preaching peace and love and really helping people genuinely. Comes out of the same tradition, and was tremendously close with Trungpa. And I you know, it's a very curious thing.
Yeah,
I'm sure it's always been the case.
I think there's two sides of that. One is certainly in all of the literature around Eastern religions say you can't get anywhere on your own. You have to have a model. You have to have somebody who's enlightened in order to enlighten you. Otherwise, you can't get anywhere. In our culture, that often takes the place because there really aren't that many. I can probably count the people on one hand who can legitimately hold that role in our culture. So that leaves us in a pretty precarious position. The other side of the you need an enlightened guru equation is that from the spiritual perspective, and this applies particularly to tantrics, once you're talking spirituality, you can justify absolutely anything with a spiritual answer. Anything. And people have justified everything with spirituality, including all of the great atrocities of history. And there have been incredibly abusive gurus who have come to the West from all traditions. So what is that? I don't know, where does that leave us? I think at the end of the day, what we have to do is, when we're engaging in a guru or spiritual practice or substance or whatever, the only thing you can really do is look at the people who have been doing it for a long period of time. Look at the disciples of the guru, or look at the people who have been doing the spiritual practice for 20 or 30 years, and preferably a lot of them, and look at the commonalities and look at the differing points and make your judgment from that on whether it's fruitful or not, and whether it can actually make people happy or not. Everything else is PR.
Well, it's curious because that's essentially how it works. The esteem that you hold the guru in is your key to whether you're getting the highest download or not. I mean, that's one of those catch-22s as well. You know, that if you regard them as simply a person who's just got habits like everybody else, so you get the enlightenment of a person, a normal person. If you regard them as this, advanced example of human evolution that has the powers to enlighten you and things like that, it's like that magic of self-creating and projection, in a sense, that you have. And yet, all the guru is, I guess, is a projection. As a projection of your own highest possibility. And I think that folks like Rumi, who had his interior kind of master, there was a master there. There was an example of many would argue an enlightened person who had found the master within, I guess, and had been trained in that way. How do you feel that the magical tradition, which you've studied extensively, relates to this whole guru and disciple situation?
The magical tradition is broken. There are no attained beings in it. It will not produce anything except psychosis.
Thank you.
That falls completely outside of the debate between Tibet and India. I think that is a clear cut. Where are they? Show me. Who are the great enlightened magicians? I haven't seen them. There could be a few immoral alchemists left running around Europe. I have not seen them, and I have not seen any evidence of their benefit to the
You
world.
haven't seen them because you have to be at the same level of vibration to see them. They don't show themselves to people.
Okay, so what are they doing then?
They are doing their secret experiments.
What are their secret experiments?
Well, I'm not at that level either, but I've
Okay,
heard
so
about
how do
Saint
you know?
Germain. You know Saint Germain?
Well, in theory, yeah, there's a Saint Germain running around. A lot of people have claimed to be him. A lot of them have been lying. In theory, yeah, Saint Germain could be running around doing God knows what. He could be a 500-year immortal. I don't know. But is he enlightened? I really doubt it, and I haven't seen any evidence in Western culture of any enlightened beings.
Well,
Okay, but if you're not at the same level of vibration, how did you see them?
in their writings.
Where?
Did you ever read the Emerald Tablets?
Well, yeah, in theory, the Emerald Tablets go back a long, long way. Where are they now?
Well, they have to be deciphered, but they are tools to access higher levels of consciousness. These tools
Sure.
have been left behind.
Sure, and the Hermetic writings are, if you really want the Hermetic writings that are currently manifesting in our culture and things like The Secret, The Kybalion is an excellent book to read, written by Paul Foster Case, Swami Vivekananda, and one other person, I don't remember. The Hermetic teachings will get you a long, long way. I'm saying they won't get you to the end.
I think it will.
Okay, sure, fine. As far as Western magic, Thelema is broken, the Golden Dawn is broken. Where do those things get you other than where Crowley was at the end of his lifetime, which was not pleasant? I don't know. As far as the guru relationship, I spent 7 or 8 years doing Western magic and chaos magic and Thelema and the Golden Dawn and all of it, and I did the Crowley system I was in the IoT for 5 years. And there are a lot of fascinating characters, but I think they're kind of kids playing dress up at the end of the day. I think if there's the only person I can think of who's tangentially connected to Western magic who can legitimately be called a master is Genesis Fiorage. Other than that, I see nobody.
He's made contributions to your journal and is a kind of underground, celebrated cult figure, I guess, in a way. Do you want to talk about Genesis?
Sure. Genesis, hi, by the way. Let's see. Jen, for Jen, do people in the room know Genesis George? Yeah. Okay. No. All right. Jen is a very unique being. Genesis George was born in the Midlands in England in the 50s and is primarily a rock musician. She is a androgynous being who has gotten a lot of surgical implantation to be both male and female. This is her most current project or thing that she's manifested in culture. The other ones include industrial music, which she invented, body piercing. The popularity of body piercing and tattoos in our culture is a direct result of Jen's work. Rave and acid house were another direct effect of Jen's work. Also, we're even interested in magic at all. Jen, in the 70s and then in the early 80s, first popularized the idea of sigils, which we can talk about in a bit as well, and demystified magical techniques taken out of the Museum of Magic, which was basically dead at that point. Western magic, the layman ceremonial magic, basically died with Jack Parsons in the early 50s and had gone dormant until there was a peak of re-interest in the 60s, and then Jen basically brought it back and demystified it of these centuries of accumulated garbage, Kabbalistic mumbo-jumbo attached to it, and repopularized it through the Temple of Psychic Youth, which was not a magical order, but a group of people dedicated to finding new ways of living and an anarchist and occult response to mass culture, what Jen called a culture, and that's the clearest. That's where I draw most of the inspiration for the idea of ultraculture from. Is the clearest precedent. Jen's bands are called Throbbing Gristle and Psychic Television. If you get the chance to see her play while they're still active as a band in this city, I definitely recommend it. I'll be coming out with a book as well that I'm putting together with Jen called The Psychic Bible, which will be the complete magical writings of the Temple of Psychic Youth, which haven't been published till now. So that turned into a plug, which is really weird. And I was like, well, Jen is the only real magician, and by the way, I'd be like a book with it. But that's all true.
No, I think that's well done, and the contribution that she made to Ultraculture is really awesome too. I've been a big fan. Never really met her now, but that brings up this notion that a magician, in a sense, that it's not a 9-to-5 job. That the study of these things, which are basically about altering your consciousness and becoming more and more aware, are things that you season into what you do in the world, how you bring it into the world. And in Genesis' case, the musician, the artist, the poet, the author, all of these elements are, I think that I see a lot of connection between art and the magic path. Would you care to comment on that?
Yeah, absolutely. A magician is somebody who brings something out of nothing, wrap it out of a hat, or in the case of, somebody who can manifest things in the culture, who can manifest things that didn't exist on this planet before they created them. And in that case, the artist, the magician, art and magic are the same. At the end of Crowley's life, in his last book, I think his last book was 8 Lectures on Yoga. I think it was in the Book of Thoth, I'm not sure which one, but at the end of that book, which is one of his most lucid and actually humble writings, he compares artists and magicians, and he says that the greatest artist is far greater than the greatest magician, which is a bit of an amazing statement for him to make.
He was an artist, though.
That's right, he was
a
one.
painter. I'll let you say that.
Yes, but artist in the sense of somebody who is able to create and manifest at the cultural level, whether it's something like, this chapel, or smuggling things in from across the veil of heaven, as it were. And if you go back to prehistory, the original profession was magician. It wasn't prostitute that came second. There were probably 4 of the magicians. And Crowley was in that high tradition. The original role in our culture was the shaman, and the shaman was not necessarily the guy who took lots of drugs and gave people patchouli oil rub-downs at Burning Man. The shaman was the person who eclipsed all professions into one role, and you see that less now. But the shaman was the person who knew what to do. They were the person. They were doctor, psychotherapist, cultural leader, artist. They were the ones who made the cave paintings on the walls that created reality as they went. And the magical role of the shaman was the central one, but not necessarily the only one. So the shaman was the person who knew how to create reality, and also usually the only one who could facilitate it. So in our culture, that I always compare that to somebody like Rupert Murdoch, who was able to create the cave paintings on the walls that we mistake for reality. En masse, if you take our entire culture, the entire globe is one tribe, and then it's people like Ted Turner, Rupert Murdoch, and Karl Rove, and wonderful people like that who are filling that role in our culture. But I guess where I was going with that is that artist and magician were the same until probably the Agrarian Revolution, when people split into roles and specialized because because groups of people got so big from farming and being sedentary and settling down and creating cities, that people needed to specialize because there were just too many. One person, the culture grew, and as culture grew, the role had to fracture. So really they're the same thing at the end of the day, and there's a high tradition of artists who make art that is magic. Austin Osman Spare is a good example, who was a painter in South London in the early part of the century, who made paintings which were literally alive and had a psychotropic effect on the viewer. He was completely unknown until probably the 70s or the 80s, and is now kind of a seminal figure in the occult underground. He was the person who modernized the concept of the sigil. Certainly magical art is art which not only depicts other states of reality, but it creates them and has an effect on reality. Something I'm sure you know quite a bit about.
What do you want to? I love Spare. He's just one of my favorite artists. Brilliant draftsman and calligrapher as well. Just astonishing. Do you want to describe what a sigil is for for folks. I wish we had a blackboard here for you to draw something like that, but maybe you can
Yes.
do it in the air.
This is the old standby magic trick that you can do if you're... how many people in the room are magicians or would consider themselves magicians? Okay, all the people in front. All right. This is always the stock. Everyone seems to have to re-explain this one every time, but that's because it's very potent. This is a wish-fulfilling technology. A sigil is a condensation of desire, which it's a symbol or a logo for something that you want to occur in future time, which sounds more arcane than it actually is. Okay, so this is a very simple, effective way of doing a magical spell. I don't know, somebody in the front row give me like something they would like to happen. You going? Alex?
Yeah, I want to be able to move the Chapel of Sacred Mirrors upstate to a particular land.
Okay. This is where I wish we did have a whiteboard. Okay, I'm just going to have to get the...
Just a piece of paper and like a pen, and you just like hold it up.
The people in the back will be able to see it. All right.
Have a Sharpie with it. Sharpie? Yeah.
All right. This, by the way, is a demonstration, not the real thing. Oh, wow, okay, this is actually great, okay. Okay, well, actually, can I write on that?
Yeah. Don't read the names off here, but this is the land.
Okay. Awesome. So you're very, okay, so this is already done, basically, because you have a clear intent. That's usually all you need to get the magic to happen. Once you know exactly what you want, it's just a matter of focusing and meditating on it. And the good thing about this is from Google Maps. Mm-hmm. Okay. You have a representation. This is going back to what I was talking about with models. And if at any point this doesn't make sense, please stop me because I talk ahead of myself. Going back to what we were talking about with models, this is one part of a model. This is what James Fraser in The Golden Bow called he would call this type of magic sympathetic magic, where he said if you have a representation or a splinter of something, like a fragment from something, you, by the Hermetic holographic principles, have a link to its totality, meaning something that was, he called this law of contagion, something that was in contact. It's either something that was in contact with something, or as a representation of something is a link to the whole thing. It's just as good as having the real thing, which is why, going back to the voodoo doll example, it's hairs and fingernails to affect something. It's a piece. So in this case, we have a piece of your dream. And all right, let's see. The thing. This is the simplest way to make a sigil. Can I just do any page here? Or?
Yeah.
Okay.
You want to make it on the back of it?
Let me do it here first so that people can see.
Yeah.
Okay, so give me that phrase again. The wording is that you always be careful what you wish for. The wording is very important.
Well, the phrase to move the chapel up to this land in the Hudson, how should we say, awesome.
Cosm on the Hudson?
Yeah.
Okay. So, I'm going to write this really big so people can see. So that leaves out a lot of variables, of course, but it's probably the easiest way to put it. It leaves out what happens to this Cosm, it leaves out where in the Hudson, it leaves out in what capacity in the Hudson.
Yeah. At the bottom of the Hudson? Yeah, we don't want that. Yeah.
But this is where this is where trust comes in, and trust and faith are not usually good enough, but this is where, so notice it's not really the process, it's all, everything in between the lines. This is where you have to trust in whatever is looking out for you, knowing your best intentions. So I will leave that one to you.
Or I can give you the secret name of this place.
No, that's not.
Yeah, but it'll all become condensed.
Okay. So, but I was going to show that. Is that okay?
Use that.
Okay. So, Cosmo on the Hudson.
Not for the name of the town.
You don't want to show the actual. Okay. We'll just do this. Like I said, this is a demo. We can do something else as well. Okay. So what you do to make a sigil? Now you have your clear statement of desire. Usually it's things like I will to have a girlfriend by Saturday, or I will to find $20 on the street. Again, this is where we get into the real questions, which is what do you actually want? Is what you want actually good for you? And then the head spin from that will take you years. Getting what you want is easy. Anyone who's done simplest magic knows that. The problem is dealing with what you get once you ask for it. So here's our intent. So the first thing you would do once you have your statement of intent is you knock out the vowels. And I'm going to knock out on and the as well, just to make it simpler. Okay, so in that case we have CSM, HDSN, and then you knock out the repeating letters. So you have CSM, HDN. You would then take those remaining letters and form them into a symbol that looks cool, to the best of your ability. So we'll do that really quick. And this is the demonstration version. Corporations are excellent at doing this with logos. They're excellent at taking desires and condensing them down into catchphrases, logos, or jingles that are so nefarious and well-designed that we take them completely for granted. That's magic. As Grant Morrison, do people know Grant Morrison, pointed out very astutely at one point that, going back to what you were saying actually, the inheritors of the Hermetic tradition in our culture are our corporations. They're the ones who know this stuff the best. Something which, as part of my tantric breaking down taboo practices, I've been learning more and more of as I work in advertising. I've spent the last couple weeks writing training manuals for Walmart employees to go, posters to go in Walmart employee break rooms, giving them tips on how to be more ecologically sustainable, which is especially funny because at my last job I spent a lot of time editing and working on the Robert Greenwald's anti-Walmart propaganda movie, which caused Walmart such public shame that they put $4 billion into, something like that, $4 billion into turning themselves into the world's leaders in sustainable business, going right down to holding that standard to all the companies that they supply their stores. So within the space of 10 months, I've gone from hunting Walmart with a stick through the jungle to helping them rebuild after I helped get them as part of the team effort, I guess. And if that doesn't make you think I'm disreputable, I don't know what will. And the point of that story was to say that this is something that goes on every day. The battle of ideologies and ways of constructing the world that is waged completely at the symbolic level. All right, so your next step, you would have something like that that combines all those letters. And then from that point, it becomes an artistic process where you kind of work with that symbol and you simplify it down and try to make it look impressive, something interesting enough to seem spooky and impressive to your unconscious. So we'll go through a couple different versions of that. Okay, so you just play with it and you get something like that. This is something that can be done not only with symbols, but you can create mantras from the letters you get. You can create musical tracks, you can create pieces of art. But doing this trains you in the way of thinking. So really all you would need is this. This is a condensed version of what you want to happen. The important part of why this is a symbol now instead of just a sentence is because now it's possible to forget what it's for. At that point, you can leave this and let it sit for a week or 2 weeks to the point where you forget why you ever made it. You can make these in batches of 10 or 20 or more, and then leave them and go back to them once you have no idea what they were for. The point is your unconscious will still remember, and then you can focus on this with all of your mustered willpower and intent, and it becomes much more easier to manifest because you're accessing the God part of yourself. This is a trick to get around years of spiritual training. You're able to manifest the part of you which creates your reality without getting in your own way, because once you've forgotten what it's for, you have no mental loop running in your head of, oh, I shouldn't have that, or that doesn't make sense, or magic's not real, or whatever. And those are things that stay with everyone at every level, I think. So this is kind of like doing something like this is like reaching around your own resistance to the fact that you are God and going from there. And it's incredibly powerful and it's real magic and it's really all you need. Everything else, the rituals and all of that are more elaborate versions of this very basic mental equation. So what you would then do once you have that symbol is what people call this charging it. It always sounds like something from Zelda. But what you would do is then get into some form of trance state to the point where your mind shuts down and then focus on this. And that can be done by meditating. It can be done by fasting. It can be done by spinning and dancing. It can be done with substances. It can be done with sex. It can be done with almost anything you can do to get yourself into an altered state and a state of mind where you stop thinking. And then once you're in that no-mind state, you focus very intently on your symbol. The easiest way, as people always say, is to have an orgasm while you're staring at that symbol. That's the quick and enjoyable way. Alone or with a partner. That's a sigil, and there's a lot of different versions of that. What you have there is a condensation of intent. We can write on this, just to make this more exciting. I'm gonna include the sigil in like the path of the road. Should we do questions at the end, or? Unless something doesn't make sense.
No, the one thing I need to ask you about that, you're saying intention. Does intention have to do with what Mr. Gray's intention is for this to come into fruition, or is your intention now being split in half because your intention is to show us what this is?
That's a good question. This is all Alex. I'm facilitating. My intention is to show you, but and like I said, this is just a demonstration of how this will work. We're not actually going to do it on stage, but this is creating the material basis for sorcery. Is it? Yeah. But that's a very good question, because questions of intent and whose intent is the intent, and these are all things that need to be untangled in the magical process, especially when working with groups, because everybody's always on a different page, and that's true of life anyways. Okay, so pardon me. Okay. So, not the most artistically advanced thing in the world, but it'll do. The other part of this is it's usually good once you have a clear representation of what you want to happen. That's a tricky one. Certainly I think Buddhism as a whole, definitely in Vajrayana, the intent is not necessarily, one of the first vows taken is I am meditating, I am doing spiritual practice for the benefit of all beings, to liberate all beings. And bodhicitta, which is a meditation that I've done and engaged in at some truly bottom periods of my life, is, tell me if I get this wrong, but the bodhicitta meditation is willfully taking all of the suffering, the considerable suffering of this planet into your heart as black smoke, visualizing it as black smoke, or which is similar to what is called in the Western magical tradition the demon Belial.
That's not literally that practice. That's a different.
I got that wrong.
Yeah, that's a what's it? Tom Clan.
I'm sorry.
Tom Clan. But
Generally,
bodhicitta is just basically the altruistic intention to bring liberation to all beings. And their whole notion is that you can't get very far in your own spiritual journey if you're only on it for yourself.
Right.
The Hinayana was more, I'm going to get out of this realm of suffering by doing my practice and see you later, Charlie. Whereas the Mahayana was more like, I can't leave this realm, really, because there are too many beings that I am as well.
Right.
And so we're all in this together, kind of orientation toward intention. And it just seemed like that was an incredible intention to bring into one's practice. And in a way, with the work that you're doing, you've reached a similar bodhisattvic kind of stage. You're sharing with the world. It's not all about you so much. You're pulling by bringing your the knowledge that you have to the world.
That's very nice of you, but I only write books and get on stage because I want to meet girls.
Well, at least he's honest, girls.
Yeah, I think that the problem with that is, what if people don't want to be liberated?
Well, that's why they're around for a long time. You see, they're in it for the long haul. You see.
Or people could be in it for the long haul also because they enjoy being here. And I to presume that, okay, this is a tricky one. I think that my understanding of reality, what I believe is that everybody is God and everybody is creating a reality they're living in because they choose to do so, and they also choose to forget that they're creating it on purpose. That means that everybody in hell, to use a metaphorical term, is there because they want to be. And with their people who are suffering in hell and also are God in the truest sense, which is everybody in hell, will hit back with full divine power at anybody who tries to knock them off course. And hell is populated almost exclusively by people who are there trying to save other people. So I'm going to say something which is probably going to offend possibly everybody in the entire room. Buddhas and saints are the lords of hell.
Well, there's definitely bodhisattvas in hell. They place them there in their paintings. But their idea is that one has to go into any realm, in order to relieve suffering. Now, I put a medic on a battlefield in a situation that, hopefully if they're able to patch you together or save your leg or whatever, there are healers and people who do stuff for others that make a difference in
Mhm.
people's lives.
Yeah.
And, it's basically to relieve suffering. Now, I'm in agreement that a lot of people can be misguided in that, and some of the religious folks are some of the worst and most misguided. But I'm curious whether you think that the notion that one is that it is a part of the spiritual path that you need to acknowledge the collective, and that in a sense that what you're doing is for the greatest good, for the greatest number, should be part of one's intention if one is intending a spiritual life.
Right. Where do I start with that? I think, okay, here's my version of this is the tantric version of getting somebody out of hell. Hello. It's very nice out here. You know you don't have to be in there. No, you have to be in there. Oh, okay. Hello. I'm eating ice cream. I'm on the beach. It's very nice. Well, you have to be in there because you've taken a vow that you will not leave until everybody is enlightened. Okay. Well, I'm enlightened and I'm not in there. Hello. Oh, you're down there because you promised you would never leave until you saved so-and-so because you really, really, truly love them, and you're down there because you'll be there until the end of time and you're suffering in eternal goth torment. Hello, this ice cream is very nice. Oh, you finally decided to, okay, you can come out now. And it's a process of reminding somebody that they're choosing to be there, not, oh, let me come in and patch your wounds, because at that point it's, help me, help me, help me. And then you're in hell. So the difference between the tantric version and the Buddhist version is and why Buddhas and saints are the lords of hell is because they're down there trying to save everybody, and they're creating those realms. Because the Bodhisattva vow says you will not attain enlightenment and leave where you are until everybody is enlightened. Unfortunately, everybody does not want to be enlightened. They're choosing from their already naturally enlightened state to be there. Enlightenment is not something you work towards, it's your birthright, in my understanding. And that's challenging, but
No, I'm in agreement with what you're saying, and it's not the habit of bodhisattvas to be suffering. Their whole presentation is joyful. And I suppose you could say that the Dalai Lama is the Lord of Hell, but I think that he's really bringing a lot of joy and uplifting people as well. And he's a representative of the Bodhisattvic tradition. He's a being that comes back and incarnates for the benefit of others. And I'd say that that's true. And just having taken teachings and stuff and seeing his presentation and the way that he lights up a room. And so I tend to think that the altruistic intentions to enlighten others or something, you got to be creative with it. You're not going to win any folks if you're just preaching at them, obviously, and it's going to make things worse. So that's why, just like the magicians, I think that they try to bring whatever intentions they have into what they do in the world, and they don't even blab about it on stages, I guess. But yeah,
it means I'm not a real magician, by the way.
So anyway.
Yeah, it's very, very, as anybody who's attempted spiritual healing work will know, these are the trickiest issues there are. And for me, it comes down to, this is what I was saying earlier with love. It comes down to, if somebody wants to You know, if somebody wants to throw their life away and shoot heroin until they overdose and die, it comes down to your respect for them as a divine being, as that being their right to do. And what that does is it creates a victimless universe. And that's tough because at first it's what Crowley called the vision of sorrow. That's the overwhelming sorrow of people or divine beings playing non-divine beings because it's fun, but they choose to live this way, and they choose to live in forgetfulness and samsara and maya and delusion, when they could choose just to turn around and realize what they really are. And that's horrifying. And you look at, and you know, the hell realms that you talk about, Bodhisattva's going to, and that, those are all real. I've been to many of them. The overwhelming suffering is, you know, you don't need to do anything more than look at the front page of the paper to understand the absolutely fucked condition this planet is in. But realizing that we've chosen that, and at the end of the day, it's not the only planet in the universe. And realizing that anybody who actually wants help and actually wants to wake up will do so automatically. That's what makes, for me, the vision of sorrow dissipate, what Crowley called the abyss. You can't get through the abyss on. You can't get through hell without realizing that it's elective. Period.
Yeah. I think that's the thing that people learn when they pull themselves out of any kind of disease as well. The elective nature of it. Well, what can be done in a magical sense, you might say nothing, for the state of the world, as you're saying? We look at the front page, and Al Gore's trying to, you know, cast his spell today over a world so that we can understand how connected we are and how our actions influence the environment. And as you were saying, a better game might be to create a sustainable relationship with nature and with each other. I think that comes down to love. And so how do you see the traditions in some way helping in that department?
I agree completely. I mean, I've taken, over the last year or so, I've taken all of my energy out of playing Dungeons and Dragons, Magic, into sustainable and ecological practice. And, you know, I work doing advertising for companies that do sustainable products. That right now is, as Al Gore has pointed out, the biggest crisis, and that comes down to realizing that we just need to keep the game going. That's one thing we can all agree on, is having a game board to play on, even though we're all playing different games. As far as what help can be done at the magical level, other than, you know, I think anybody, going back to what you were saying about the Dalai Lama, or enlightened beings, one common thread among the enlightened, or whatever you want to call these people, is that they have basically ended their lives. They died before they died, as the Sufis say, and they are continuing to be incarnate or continually reincarnate in order to just keep things going as maintenance for everybody else. It's like the workers at Disneyland or whatever. As at the magical level, I think the number one thing, as I said when I was here last time, is rejecting any apocalyptic script. All the major monotheist religions, especially Christianity and Islam and Judaism to some extent as well, are running at the same fundamental principle, which is they want to sterilize the world by fire and recreate whatever. Jesus fun time, happy roller coaster land, or you know, a paradise for their religion. There's an excellent book by a guy named Robert J. Lifton called Superpower Syndrome, which goes into this. Basically, I mean, the world we're living in is created by competing monotheisms who all have the same fundamental script, but slightly differing versions, playing with nuclear weapons to see who can sterilize the world by fire first. And that includes Tibetan Buddhism. Tibetan Buddhism, if you call it Chakra Tantra, includes an apocalyptic script that is meant to run in the 24th century where the world is immolated by fire, creating a Buddhocracy and a Buddhist paradise. And this is what the Dalai Lama gives people initiations into when he does his Kala Chakra initiations. Fuck that. It's primitive at the end of the day. Mankind's original religion was fire worship. It's fire and blood always. When you cut down these religions at the very core, it's always fire worship, and it becomes sterilize the world by fire. Well, you can try it, but the number of people on this planet with non-apocalyptic scripts outnumbers the people with apocalyptic scripts, and it comes down to a numbers battle, and the non-apocalyptic people win. And I think that's the page we should be on, because the world's kind of nice for all its, Walmarts. I kind of like it. I would kind of like it to continue going, and apocalyptic scripts and toy-breaking scripts would work if it was only children on this planet. But there are adults living here as well, and we would like it to continue. Thank you. So, no apocalypse. Keep the game running, and that basically all that comes down to is, again, it's the fundamental respect for allowing people to do what they're doing. It's just allowing for there to be a playground in the first place, and letting the kids do their thing.
Yeah, but I think that we can see if we just let everybody do their thing now, the way that it is, I suppose, including corporate America and including the oil industry and all the rest of these things, we're in peril. And so I suppose we're headed for, and many people sense this kind of breakdown, and I suppose that's why the apocalyptic sense looms, as well as that it's just whatever's born is going to die. So we have this inevitable sense of the world ending because we end or something. All projection of fears about that. Do you want to say anything about the 2012 kind of thing?
We'll see. I think that 2012 at the end of the day is Christian messianism, that's the word, charted up for stoners. Terence McKenna, I recommend Terence McKenna's books to everybody if you haven't read them. He's a genius and a great speaker as well. Terence McKenna got the 2012 idea from the Omega Point idea of Taylor de Chardin, which was essentially the idea that Christ was the ending point of history, and that history was accelerating into the curve, terminating in the second coming of Christ. McKenna's was a bit different, but even Terence McKenna, towards the end of his days, would say, well, maybe, we'll see. I don't really I see it as people have been predicting the apocalypse or the rapture or whatever for every generation since the beginning of apocalyptic thinking. And people, individual apocalypses happen, cultural apocalypses happen, but the game keeps running. The idea that 2012 represents a mass cultural shift point, sure. I think that enough people have invested their belief into it that they'll create it by dint of willing it. I think it could probably happen on 2013, but only because, again, it's going back to the sigil idea. When you create an intent, usually it manifests when you've given up hope of it ever manifesting. So for instance, look at 9/11. Everybody has so much belief invested in Y2K and the idea that there would be an apocalypse on New Year's Eve 2000 or New Year's Eve 2001. People had so much belief invested in that and had so much of their energy invested in that. And of course it didn't happen on the date because people were too focused on it, and then as soon as they turned away, 9/11. So I think a similar process will probably happen in 2012. I hope that it takes I hope that it's positive. I'm sure it'll be positive. I don't know if it will apply. In fact, I know it won't apply to anybody except the people who've already invested belief in it. And of course, all the people that they affect in their own lives. So it'll be considerable, but life goes on through every prophecy. And every shifting point. There was another point to that I wanted to make about corporations. Clearly we've changed from a nation-state world into a corporate world, and a world that is ruled by corporations. The problem with that is that corporations are not people. They are not run by people. They are non-entities and are not holdable to the law. There is no single will driving it. Therefore, does it have an Atman? Is it also God? I don't really know. But it's similar to what both Hindus and Tibetans call preta or hungry ghosts.
Yeah, or a virus or something.
Sure.
It's not quite alive in it, but it's dependent on the living in order
Right.
to reproduce.
Right. It's like a demon that controls all these people. Exactly. The parasites on the planet, the demonic parasites, and they could be harnessed into doing good things for the they're daemons, not good or evil. It's a spirit, and some of them do good things and some don't. But it's the same as demons. They're non-corporeal, invisible things that people live in fear their whole lives from. They're destroying the environment. Or if they work for them, it's, I'm going to lose my job, or I'm not going to get my promotion, or, living in fear of your coworkers who are all part of this hive organism. So I think that's clearly where magical technologies come into. These aren't arcane and abstruse things. They're metaphors for dealing with the realities of the world that we live in. We are dealing with a world run by spirits and ghosts. So how do you tell a ghost what to do? Well, read Magic in Theory and Practice by Aleister Crowley. You just cut out the parts where he has his poetry or talks about himself. Lighter Null and Cyclonaut by Peter Carroll is an excellent book on magic, stripped of. It's still full of bullshit, but stripped of at least Crowley's personality.
Do you want to say anything about the connection between psychedelics or entheogens and the magical tradition?
Sure. They're essential. They're essential to some paths. Okay, that's okay. They were very essential to me. Let's leave it at that. I hold, especially naturally occurring psychotropic substances, in very high esteem. I think that they need to be used with utmost respect and also caution, and always remembering that the psychedelic tourism is no different than physical tourism. It is just as dangerous, and the beings that you meet on those trips need to be held in as much with the same level of manners and consciousness as people you would meet on a trip to Belize or Honduras or anywhere, and or the Lower East Side, Those beings are beings. They are, when psychedelics open doorways into other dimensions, those doorways are two-way. It's not just a light show. It is not just in your head. Use respect. Use moderation. Use preferably, in my case, I was a practicing magician and had a meditation practice and spiritual practice for years before I ever took psychedelic substances, and I think that was crucial in navigating those spaces in productive ways, and they were not always navigated productively, but having a pre-existing language and a pre-existing framework that you develop not only through study, but also spiritual practice, and practicing trance and navigating trance states that are naturally occurring is essential. Because magic alone is dangerous enough. Combining psychedelic substances with it will, there's, like, as Crowley said at one point, there's, he did say a few useful things. As he said at one point, there is no danger whatsoever in achieving results, whether they're sorcerer's results or contacting other realities or contacting other beings. There is no danger that you will not succeed. The danger is in taking off your armor when you think it's okay. The danger is in taking things at face value and not holding not only not holding a skeptical attitude, but also not maintaining proper boundaries. So I guess all that comes down to, I think at least in my case, they were essential at a point, but they're not the beginning, they're not the end, they're not the be-all, end-all, but they will confirm, they can be used to confirm the conclusions that you have already come to through your magical and spiritual practice, and cast new light on them and give context.
That's, I think, really well put. It's come down to us as no casual use of sacraments. Yeah. Well put. Well, we've got a full house. Are there some questions for Jason?
Yes, I have a question. I'm a neophyte, I'm a baby rich.
Yeah, I'm a neophyte, I'm a baby rich, and you mentioned hell. And everyone who I've run into has taught me is that there really is no hell. There's negative and positive forces in the universe. As we walk a spiritual path, the teachers will come and they will show us. I've never heard someone who claims to be someone who practices magic make reference to hell before, and I was wondering if you could just talk about that a little more.
Sure. Hell, what's a good definition of hell? Hell is I've heard a couple good definitions of hell. One definition is doing something over and over again and expecting different results and not making changes. The other is being in a state of suffering that you believe you have to be in. You do not have to be in that state. What I would speak to with that is, yes, there is no hell in the sense of there's no necessity for people being there, but there's certainly hell as created by spiritual traditions who believe that people who don't believe in their truth need to be in jail. Hell is being in a cancer ward at 3 a.m. and looking at the single light looking at the single window on the light coming through the single window in the room and thinking that's the last light you'll ever see in your life, and thinking back over the times in your life that you've made failures and that you've made the wrong choice, and realizing that you're going to a not pretty place, whether you're in a not pretty place, that you're unresolved. That's hell. I mean, hell is what is experienced by people in war zones. Hell is waking up in the third world and realizing my children are dead because they didn't get clean water, or they didn't get food, they didn't get 30 cents worth of rice. Waking up and realizing my children are dead and they are not coming back, that's hell. And these are zones that are not only human experiences, but have astral and causal components, and those are astral realms inhabited by those people. That's hell. So yes, that is very real. I encourage trips to the third world. You'll see a lot of it.
So actually, just a riff on that, you're talking about the choice aspect, the choice to be in hell. For instance, you pick the person who's woken up and their children are dead, or I actually studied reading Eddie Wiesel's Night on the way here, and facing a big piece of hell in terms of Holocaust. When the events of one's life overwhelm so much that everything seems dark, okay, there's still a choice to be in hell if one is, one can still choose one's reaction to those events from any place. I'm curious about, though, where is one choosing to be in hell and not be in hell, or where is one dissociating from reality and choosing not to be in reality? Seems to me there's a fine line. I know certain people who have had very traumatic childhood experiences who spend their lives completely stuck in the flow of that. I know other people who have had, the spiritual path, the spiritual development to kind of choose not to be held in that hell, but when I look at them, I see a dissociation from their essential humanity because of a place where they're not able to bear their suffering and are stepping away in some way from a piece of their condition. So it's not really a question so much, just do you have a comment about this is it. Could you comment on Aragampin, on the Kabbalistic perception of the capacity for suffering being a pre-existing sort of a pre-requirement for creation itself to take place, the necessity of suffering, and what I understand to be in my part of my spiritual path, the work to tolerate my own suffering and tolerate the suffering of the world and not dissociate from it. And how do we walk a line between that when we're attempting to choose a reality that is not in hell?
Right.
You with me?
Yeah, I think one of the reasons this is so complicated is because it's really the only question, one of the only questions there is at the end of the day. Why does suffering exist? The only answer I have at the end of the day is because we choose for it to. Why? I don't know, because we're engaged in religions that tell us that we need to be suffering to be purified. And that includes at the incarnatory level. In the Kabbalistic framework, certainly the idea of doth in the tree of life, the idea that, what's the best way to put it? The idea that we're broken to be made whole, or that there's a fundamentally broken place between divinity and humanity. That comes from an anti-humanist perspective. It comes from the perspective that God is a bearded guy in the sky. And to some extent, on one level, on one of the four manifestatory levels of the Sephirah, it comes from not having the perspective that we are God. Doth, the idea that the Sephirah are broken to allow the influx of divine energy. Yeah, but it also assumes that that's not our natural state. So in terms of suffering, I think that really all that I can say with dissociation, that's a crucial point, because if you're just dissociated from suffering, but you're continuing to suffer, you're still choosing to suffer at some point. And the absolutely tough thing at the end of the day, and this relies on a religious framework that takes into consideration either that we are fragments of God that choose to incarnate here, or that we continue to reincarnate. That when you die, you are either absorbed back into Godhead or you take a new incarnation. Choosing to walk out of hell can include choosing to die. That's a tough leap, but that's what that perspective takes. So, yes.
I had millions of thoughts and dozens of questions and comments that I wanted to share during the course of your discourse. And one of the things that I learned recently, one of the things that I learned, as I told you when I met you before, when you first walked in the room, that I'm a Sufi, I'm a Muslim, and I'm also an imam of the New York City Department of Corrections. And Walaikum assalam wa rahmatullah. And I say this because this activity that I've chosen, this path, if you will, has come by default, where I had to not only study but meditate in some detail about Islamic scripture, and of course I'm going to see things from that perspective. One of the things that I found, and I'm not alone among Sufi scholars in this, is that the Quran, the wording of the Quran in the original Arabic implies that hell is a temporary state of being rather than like a place where we're completely consigned. And that the results, that people, being in this state of hell are there as the results of their own actions, their own choices, that there was no real injustice that was done to them, that it was something that they chose. Now, of course, this begs the question of two different things. Of course, there's those people who are suffering through no choice of their own, which of course is a very difficult theological nut to crack. And it also begs another question about whether or not there's a difference between suffering and the pain of growth. Every time, like for instance, like you had mentioned, these prognostications of apocalyptic destruction and everything, and these things can be looked upon as being exoteric, that manifestations of something that's happening either on a small scale in human society or on a large scale in human society, or it could be something that's happening within our own spiritual growths. I mean, I know that throughout my life, and I've been in this body for a little over 46 years, and there were times that I experienced very painful transitions from one spiritual station to the next, but it was necessary, and in retrospect, it was part and parcel of the whole experience. Or when I'm playing my instruments, because I'm a musician, I mean, there were times that my fingertips would be raw, and it's pain, it's suffering, but at the same time, after a while, it solidified into something that manifested in my physical and mental ability to make music. There's one other thing that I wanted to mention, is that your discourse about some of the Buddhists who were depicted in positions in hell and everything. There's a number of, now Alex had said something about that they could be there to guide people out of hell. And believe me, my work in the prisons, I can have some identification in that, because things get really heavy in there. But on the other hand, I remember a reading where the Prophet Muhammad once said that there will be people who have the appearance of the people of heaven, who are in reality destined for hell, and other people who have the appearance of those who are destined to hell, who in reality are destined towards paradise.
Okay. Very well put. Very well put. Last question about hell, and then let's talk about creating a positive future. If you really want out of hell, Amici will be here this week. I recommend going and getting a hug, and that'll probably do it. Seriously. Okay, where do I start with that? What was the question? Is suffering necessary for growth?
It was more of a statement, something I'm putting out there, comment on, not really a question.
Okay. Then I'll just say suffering is good for can be good for getting from one place to the other, but I don't think it produces spiritual results, but does it produce enlightenment? It can produce a state where enlightenment becomes the only option, and that's been used in like classic tantric stories about, for instance, Maxendranath and Gorakshnath, the founders of the Nath order in India. The classic story is, I believe, Maxendranath has fallen asleep and forgotten that he's divine, and he's become a householder and has a family and children, and his good buddy Gorakshnath shows up and skins his family and hangs up their skins and says, "Remember, it's just an illusion, you're awake." And he's like, "Oh yeah, thank you." So yeah, that's one technique for causing enlightenment when it's the only option. But I don't know. Okay, let's talk about the future. Yes.
So I have a question simple practical question, I think. And again, I'm coming from the perspective of some of the folks you mentioned, more parents of genesis. In fact, that the early dancing, I think, is my center point. Dancing on a practical level, mass sort of consciousness and mass sort of transformation through something physical on that level. So since your experience and perspective is shaped by magic as a practice, what do you feel like is possible, given technology, given where we are headed as a global sort of connective tissue now, with practices that can link those things up at a very bodily level across the world?
Great question. The question is, what can we do from a magical framework to basically spread the word, and if humanity is a group organism and a connective tissue, as you said, how can we, I guess, stabilize these ideas in culture? Is that accurate phrasing of your question? I think the internet has done an amazing amount. The internet was more psychedelic and important for cultural change than LSD. And was also given to us by the Department of Defense. Thank you. I think that the internet has basically mutated us into a new species within the course of a decade. Thank you, Al Gore. And the amount of discourse that has happened on these topics in the last 10 years, when people were isolated and disconnected before and had probably zines and mail networks as their main mode of connectivity. The amount of information exchange has been incredibly fast. So make use of it while we still have it. Let me knock on the stage. Do not take the internet for granted. It is 99% full of absolute bullshit, but it gives you access to more information than people have had access to at any other period in history, and more ability to talk to each other. Just wait when computers go down to $100, well, they're down to $100 or $80 models now. Wait till those are mass manufactured and given out in the third world. Boy, that'll be interesting to watch. That's one thing. I think I would like to see franchised cosms or something like Cosm across the country. I think that I don't know how many people grew up in suburban wasteland like I did, but imagine having access to a supportive, not just information, but a supportive space for intaking and processing information growing up. I think that that's something that would be amazing. I'm very interested to, we have a lot of incredibly smart people here. And
we were just over in Domenher, and which is an amazing intentional community over in Italy, and they had just been participants in a global peace meditation, basically, that happened a couple months ago, and was measured at various sort of universities as far as having some impact on some field effect. They were trying to get millions of people to pray at the same time and see if there was anything that they could record. And I guess these go to Elizabeth Targ and various other kinds of folks' analysis of why does prayer work, in healing and things like that. When prayers are done for certain people, even if they don't know that they're being prayed for, sometimes it accelerates their healing process. I think that something like this can be harnessed. At least it wouldn't be a bad thing for the transformation of some of these, difficult, polluted areas and things like that, places on the earth that need healing.
Right.
I'm not saying that it will take care of everything, but I think we can harness the power of prayer and spell casting and things like that for good, for healing on a more global scale, like you're talking about.
Right, and absolutely, and those have been, the effectiveness of that has been proven again and again by scientific studies, and there's no doubt that that works, even if you want to be a skeptic and say that, well, if you make a clear intent, then your actions in the future are more likely to hedge towards things that will make your intent come true, and even if it's just a positive attitude, that'll be infectious to everybody around you, and if everybody here goes out and just makes a clear choice to create a world worth living in, that most radical of ideas, you know, that affects the people around you, and they affect the people around them, and that's, you know, it only takes, Gurdjieff used to say, it would only take 100 realized beings to change the entire planet. And that's close to the people in this room.
There's another global meditation, July 17th.
Very cool.
Fire the grid on the internet. Called Fire.
Yeah, that's a good one, Fire the Grid. And people have been doing this again and again, but at the end of the day, it's, as with magic, it's not just what you do on the astral and causal levels, as it were. It's not just the intent. You have to ground it in the material reality, which is, you have to bring it into the physical. If you know, you can't just do, you can't just do a spell to, meet your perfect partner and then never leave the house. It doesn't work that way. By the way, never try that one. Never ask for specific people. Seriously. Yes?
So, I really like what you said at the beginning in terms of the difference between magic and knowing the truth.
Right.
And I know that in a lot of kind of spiritual traditions, there's an emphasis on moral or ethical training as part of the development of the path. And I just want to know if you think that would be a useful thing to have kind of parallel the kind of, because I'm interpreting what you're saying about magic, I'm new to the whole magic idea, but I'm interpreting what you're saying about magic, which is technology and attention. With all the different kind of technologies that can be useful for different things. And you had also said something along the lines of, be careful what you wish for. Right? So, this maybe brought back what Alex was saying in terms of the whole bodhisattva thing, in the sense of, do you think that it's useful, here it is, do you think it's useful to have like a moral and ethical evolution to parallel this access to technology and attention? Does that make sense to you?
Yes, the question is, should there be an ethical framework on magic and the difference between magic and enlightenment, I guess it was, or the truth, or whatever you want to call it. The truth, magic is a hobby. It's a tool. You can do certain things with it. It's good at doing some things, and it's not so good at doing other things. The truth is, you are God, whether you remember it or not, and so is everybody else on this planet. That's the truth. You are not a victim. Whatever you think you're going through is just a game you are playing on one level or the other. And you are not limited. There is, as Ken Wilber said, no boundary. You are the divine, and the process of waking up and remembering that, or the short, sharp shock of just waking the fuck up, is what it is. Magic, should there be an ethical framework on it? Yes. Number one is, I would recommend, it really, magic is so much about contacting beings that don't have bodies. That's really what it is. Or the shamanistic aspects of it. Number one, if it didn't get a body, maybe it shouldn't have been in one. One thing that you can learn again and again from the religious traditions and the grimoires and the tantras and everything is that a human body and a human life is the most precious thing in the universe. Everything wants one, and they will stop at nothing to get one. So you already have the best thing in the universe. What else do you need? You have a human life. And cherishing and remembering that is, all you need to do is have some conversations with some of the, talk to a few demons. They're like, they're like abused children. They're like, they've really been fucked over by people trying to put them in triangles and torture them into doing things for them. They're really hung up about that. It's like, no, I was just a spirit until Christianity came around, then you thought I was being ruled by Satan, and everyone's been torturing me ever since. Fucking get over it. But, yes, okay. So that's the truth. Magic is a hobby. It's fun. It can be used to get you know, you can use it to do certain things. It will put you in a process. It will accelerate your evolution. And at the end of the day, the question should be, well, you can just take magic is, okay, to take a wide definition, magic is how you conduct yourself in the world. It's what you make. It's what you create with your time here. Because, yeah, you can meditate or remember that you're God all day long, but you still have to have a life. So what you create, and I think that to take a magical viewpoint, to say that what you manifest matters, and that you can bring something positive into all the way down into physical manifestation. Whether it's, you know, whether it's creating a work of art or creating a place for people to come to, whether it's creating a family, the most magical act of all. With loving and positive intent as an offering to the universe, that's ethics to my mind. It's not jockeying with disreputable entities from the wrong side of town for power. Because what more power do you need? You already got it. Don't let something fool you into thinking it can give you anything.
I think that's beautifully put, Jason, and I think that we have to begin to wrap up our conversation here and perhaps move into another phase. But this has been, I think, a really deep wrestling with issues that, you know, I loved at certain sections in the book that basically said, in a sense, the truth is the truth, that magic, as it's in the small sense, can be a labyrinth that people get lost in. This is what I appreciated about your taking it to the root of love, and that it's really about generating that heart of pure love. Then the moral order will come into to balance, and the magic that you bring to the world will be a positive thing. So thank you for bringing that into the world. Thank you. Where can we get Ultraculture?
Actually, I have cards for you. I think there's CDs that can be bought.
Marissa did make some. I don't. There may be some out there. Allison, do you know where they are?
It's plenty like, because we had some copies and we were going to actually
Okay.
purchase a copy to the store, which we will open. And we're going to.
Great.
Why don't we do our magic?
Let me add something. There are CDs to buy. The book is downloadable in whole from the website, ultraculture.org. I'm going to pass these cards around. They just have the website address on them, so everyone please take one. I encourage you to get involved in the online discussion as well. If I can. Great, thank you. So there's the book. If you can't afford one of these, please go to the website, or if you would like the physical hard copy. I asked $10 for them, or excuse me, how much are the CDs? Can you pass these around, please? Okay. Okay, for $10 and I'll sign them, or they can be gotten from the website for the same amount as a straight PDF, or I also, not the CDs, but the PDF, you can download it and do 10 random acts of kindness, and that'll be payment enough, so. Or buy a hard copy.
That's great. I had one other little thing that you might be able to make a comment on as well, and that's because it's 777. This was a Crowley book, and we always had it in mind to at least mention it. And there was a book about Kabbalistic writings, and it happens to be that the hall of the sacred mirrors over there is arranged there's 10 angels that are, we think, positioned similarly to a Sephiroth kind of connection. I had a little slideshow that maybe you can comment on some of the things as well. And then
Well, I'm a communistic beacon.
and then people, if they want to because it's 777, and we've set up a kind of a initiatory situation next door, can in silence kind of go the zim zone. The 777 was interesting because it kind of paralleled the going from the highest heaven realm, from Kether, and then zigzagging down to the material realm. And in the chapel there, in the hall, we've got a kind of spirit end. You can see the divine archetypes, and then there's a very flesh end. And the angels would be that kind of stations in the Kabbalistic tree. Since we did the labyrinth back in chart, we thought, well, you could use the chapel as a kind of labyrinth walk. And we've painted the map. Zachariah actually painted the map of river of fire and eyes that's going across the ceiling. So you can see the direction that it goes in the red room I'm talking about. And so I'll pull down this screen. Maybe people might want to buy something of Jason's there, and we'll get this thing turned on. And somebody might want to turn on the AC. This was one of the funniest things in here. Magic must be expressed through your life and through your work. As Richard Metzger once said to me, you can't really just be a magician. One of magic's many functions should be to act as the inspiration and grease for your secular occupation. Even writers as far back as Yeah, you want to finish that?
Included stern warnings in their books to go get a freaking job and not be that multiplied beast of all, the parents' basement magician. There's a lot of it in the world.
Yeah. The dreaded beast.
But that's cool too.
Yeah, I love that. Let's see. Now, okay, so here's at least the frontispiece of that book. What do you make of this book by Crowley?
I think it's one of his most useful books. 777, is a number he chose because he let's see, I think for two reasons. One was it's meant to represent the entire framework of the tree. It also, if you stack the 3 sevens on top of each other, they form the downward striking lightning flash of spirit manifesting into matter. He also says at one point in this book that, I don't know where he got this, but he says that people go through 777 incarnations on their way to Nirvana or whatever it is he thought they were on their way to. And that if you were a spiritual person, you were in the last 77 of your incarnations, and if you were an initiate, as he put it, or a magician, that you were in your last 7. I don't know about that, but it's an interesting theory.
Do you want to show them how the 7 kind of works? Or the 777, just the idea of the sin zone?
The downward flash?
Yeah.
So this is Francis Crick wrote an incredibly insane book in 1981 called Life Itself, where he basically says that DNA is an alien parasite from space. This is the discoverer of DNA, not a fringe person. God bless fringe people, but but it, of course, was not picked up by mainstream media at all. So maybe that makes him a French person. Anyways, he says that DNA is basically from outer space, and that it's true that every single organism and life form on the planet shares the same DNA. It's just rearranged. So really, there's only one life form on the planet. It's the mask that DNA wears and is coming to self-awareness, so that it can engineer itself away off the planet to another one. And, so we are parasites created by DNA, and maybe we should break that hold and come to a different consciousness. Anyways, the Garden of Eden story is a great way of saying don't fuck with what really matters. It's a breaking of what our natural inheritance is. Anyways.
Okay, Adam Kadmon. Let's see, I think it.
Whoa.
Wow.
I had a good riff on this one, actually. My theory of it, this is the Tetragrammaton, which is basically the formula of how divinity manifests in Kabbalah. Each one represents one of the 4 worlds, Yod-Heh-Vav-Heh. My theory of this is an Ultraculture. The Tetragrammaton, or how God manifests, is He is your individual awareness. Vow is your spiritual. The vow is the spiritual connection you have to your quote-unquote real self, or the prayer, or the connection to the holy guardian angel, or your individual Godhead. The He is the other being, that what it's the holy guardian angel. Each one of these is a window. He means window in Hebrew. Each one is a window on the world, or a separate self. And Yod is the Om, or the immanent. It's God itself, immanent reality. So essentially, what that means is that this is you. This is your experience. Vow is a connected principle. You and your experience are the same, and they are generated by a completely different entity. All of which meaning you are not separate from your experience whatsoever. And the reason that so much weird shit happens when you start doing magic is because neither you or your reality are at cause. There is no separation between cause and reality, cause and effect. Because your experience and what experiences your experience are generated by something which is neither, if that makes sense.
Jacob Beam.
Cool.
Yeah. Let's see, more Beam, I guess. Looks like alchemical engravings now. Getting more contemporary.
Oh, I love this one.
Yeah.
This was done by Froderick Codd, who was Crowley's magical son, as Crowley thought was prophesied in the Book of the Law. He was the guy who came around, and he's the best exemplar of thelemic magic. He was the one who really seriously did all the practices for the space of about 30 years. His final giving to the world, after he completely rewrote the Kabbalistic framework and told Crowley that he'd surpassed him in attainment, which of course led Crowley to disown him. He he went nuts in Vancouver, and he went into the city center in Vancouver and stripped off his trench coat and ran around naked, screaming that love was the law, that there was no restriction. Was summarily locked up in prison and proceeded to interpret every single bit of graffiti on the walls of his prison cell in Kabbalistic framework, and wrote a book called Liber 31, in which he uses graffiti to decipher the secret key of the Book of the Law and of Godhead. He later went on to join the Roman Catholic Church. At least the Sephirah are similar to the chakras, at least on one level of manifestation, but it's a slightly different version thereof. But this is the level in which they're manifest in the body, the people who practice this system.
Yeah, good old Ernst Fuchs. You can see the burning bush is a kind of a menorah or Kabbalistic kind of tree. This is Joffer Boschart, and he was like to combine all these magical and astrological and mystical theories into his visions. Wait a minute.
I've never seen these before. Is it really awesome?
Oh, it's good. Yeah. This was a guy, God, I've forgotten his name. He lived in the Chelsea Hotel. He was an awesome artist, friend of Thomas Elliott's. And, yeah. This guy I don't remember either, but all of his things are about the Kabbalistic tree. And these are the celestial beings that he deals with through working with the magic.
DMT is good for you.
Yeah, well, back to the serpent. Let's see, in the Sanskrit, 7 chakras, 7. Oh, and the using the symbols. TOOL, my dear friends, the rock musicians, are very fond of Crowleyan magic and things, and so they used a 7-star on their, I guess a heptagram on their previous tour, and then we get back to Cosm, and we can see the figures that are laid out with the kind of 10 stations around the figure here. There's 10 of them, and they're laid out pretty much like the angels in the Red Room, and we kind of figured it something like this. So one is invited to meditate on those different stages as they get to the different angels, if one wants to, and have candles in there. Anyway, that's the invitation, and we want to do it in a much more formal kind of way. This is more like just a post-magical invitation, to engage in this walk in a kind of quiet way, but to integrate the different levels of the Kabbalistic sphere there. So that's I really thank you for taking us through this. So I think Jason might be available to sign some of these, and maybe for a little conversation. Yeah.
I just thank you also. I just want to say that next week we could be all purified by fire if we like. We're going to have Cosm Fire, and you're welcome to join us up at the Center for Symbolic Studies if you'd like to sit around a fire and conjure up whatever wishes you like, and bring something with you to present, like a poem or a song or a guitar or a flute or something, and we're going to stay up all night, vigil around the fire. That would be Cosm Fire look it up on the internet. It's on Friday night coming up. Cosm.org. And there's cookies outside and grapes for all good children. So please enjoy.